When my sister convinced our dying mother to change her will and leave everything to her, she thought she had won the ultimate victory over the family disappointment. But what she discovered 3 months later in that lawyer's office would shatter her world and prove that sometimes the most overlooked daughter holds all the cards. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Elena Hartwell, and for 29 years, I had mastered the art of being invisible in my own family. While my younger sister Victoria commanded attention with her theatrical demands and carefully orchestrated emotional displays, I had learned that survival meant staying quiet, staying helpful, and never expecting the same treatment she received as a matter of course. The Hartwell family resided in the affluent suburb of Millbrook Heights, where manicured lawns and colonial architecture spoke of generational wealth and social expectations that shaped every family gathering and holiday celebration. Our childhood home on Elm Ridge Drive represented everything my parents valued: traditional success, social standing, and the preservation of family reputation through carefully managed appearances. Victoria had always been the golden child, blessed with the combination of striking looks and manipulative charm that allowed her to navigate social situations with ease while extracting maximum benefit from every interaction. Her auburn hair caught light in ways that photographers noticed. Her green eyes conveyed emotion with theatrical precision, and her ability to make others feel responsible for her happiness had been refined through years of practice on family members who enabled her behavior through their desire to avoid confrontation. My own appearance reflected a more subdued aesthetic that seemed designed by nature to blend into backgrounds rather than command center stage attention. Brown hair that refused to hold elaborate styling, hazel eyes that revealed too much sincerity. For social manipulation and a tendency toward practical clothing choices that prioritized functionality over fashion statements marked me as someone who occupied supporting roles rather than leading parts in family dynamics. The contrast between Victoria's lifestyle and my own had been established during our teenage years and had only intensified as we entered adulthood. While she pursued a liberal arts education that focused more on social networking than academic achievement, I completed a degree in accounting and finance that provided practical skills for building financial independence. Her post-graduation years involved a series of creative pursuits that never generated sustainable income, while I established a career in corporate financial analysis that provided steady advancement and professional recognition. Victoria's romantic relationships followed patterns that prioritized excitement over stability, leading to a succession of dramatic partnerships that provided material for lengthy phone conversations with our mother about emotional crises and financial difficulties. My own approach to relationships emphasized compatibility and shared values, resulting in a long-term partnership with James Richardson, a fellow financial professional whose steady character and genuine kindness had never impressed my parents, in ways that Victoria's more flamboyant boyfriends managed to achieve. The family dynamics that governed our interactions had been established through years of conditioning that taught me to expect less while giving more, creating systematic patterns that reinforced Victoria's position as the favored daughter, while relegating me to the role of reliable support system. Holiday gatherings showcased these dynamics through seating arrangements that placed Victoria next to our parents, while I occupied less prominent positions, gift exchanges that revealed significant disparities in thought and financial investment, and conversation patterns that centered on Victoria's current interests while treating my professional achievements as background information. Our mother, Margaret Hartwell, had spent decades cultivating social connections that reinforced her position within Millbrook Heights society through charitable committee participation and cultural event organization. Her attention to family reputation meant that Victoria's dramatic tendencies were interpreted as artistic sensitivity that required special consideration, while my practical approach to life was viewed as evidence of limited imagination and social ambition. The relationship between our mother and Victoria had developed into a complex dance of emotional manipulation and enabling behavior that created dependency patterns benefiting both participants. Victoria received financial support and emotional validation for her lifestyle choices, while our mother maintained a sense of importance through her role as protector and advocate for her more sensitive daughter. My father, Robert Hartwell, had built considerable wealth through strategic real estate investments and business partnerships that provided our family with financial security, extending far beyond typical middle-class circumstances. His approach to parenting reflected his business philosophy of rewarding performance and results, yet his evaluation criteria seemed to favor Victoria's emotional expressiveness over my consistent achievement and reliability. The professional success I had achieved through systematic effort and strategic career development received acknowledgement, but never generated the enthusiasm that Victoria's latest creative project could inspire during family dinner conversations. My promotion to senior financial analyst at Morrison & Associates had been noted with polite congratulations, while Victoria's decision to start a photography business had prompted extensive discussion about artistic vision and entrepreneurial courage. James had witnessed these family dynamics firsthand during holiday visits and social gatherings, offering observations about the disparate treatment that I had learned to accept as normal family functioning. His perspective as an outsider provided validation for feelings I had been conditioned to suppress, yet I maintained loyalty to family relationships that had shaped my identity despite their limitations. The financial independence I had achieved through career advancement and careful money management provided freedom from the economic dependency that characterized Victoria's relationship with our parents. While she required regular assistance, with rent payments and credit card debt accumulated through lifestyle choices that exceeded her income, I had established savings accounts and investment portfolios that demonstrated the practical value of living within one's means. My apartment in downtown Millbrook reflected my personal taste and financial capabilities, without requiring parental subsidization. The modern efficiency unit featured carefully selected furnishings that prioritized quality over quantity, creating a comfortable living space that accommodated both solitary relaxation and intimate entertaining with James and our small circle of friends. Victoria's living situation involved a series of shared arrangements with roommates who provided financial contributions toward rent and utilities for apartments that exceeded what her irregular income could support independently. Her living spaces typically featured dramatic decorating choices that prioritized visual impact over practical functionality, creating environments that served as backdrops for social media content rather than sustainable daily living. The contrast between our approaches to financial management reflected deeper philosophical differences about responsibility, planning, and the relationship between effort and reward. While Victoria operated under the assumption that financial difficulties were temporary inconveniences that family resources should address, I had developed systems for budgeting, saving, and investing that treated financial security as a personal responsibility requiring consistent attention and disciplined decision-making. Professional relationships within my workplace environment provided validation and recognition that contrasted sharply with family dynamics that minimized my achievements while celebrating Victoria's potential. Colleagues at Morrison & Associates valued my analytical capabilities and attention to detail, creating social connections based on mutual professional respect rather than family obligation or emotional manipulation. The social circles that James and I had developed included other professionals who shared our interests in financial planning, career development, and building relationships based on compatibility rather than drama. These friendships provided emotional support and intellectual stimulation that supplemented the limitations of family relationships without creating conflict or requiring explanation of complex family dynamics. Weekend activities typically involved outdoor recreation, cultural events, and social gatherings that reflected our shared values and provided relaxation from professional responsibilities. James and I had established patterns of communication and decision-making that emphasized cooperation and mutual respect, creating relationship stability that contrasted with the emotional volatility that characterized Victoria's romantic partnerships. The investment portfolio I had built through systematic contributions and strategic asset allocation represented more than financial planning. It symbolized my commitment to creating security and independence that would protect me from the economic instability that affected Victoria's lifestyle choices. Each monthly investment represented progress toward goals that extended beyond immediate consumption to include long-term financial freedom. My understanding of financial markets and investment strategies had developed through professional experience and personal study that provided knowledge extending beyond basic money management to include sophisticated approaches to wealth building and risk management. This expertise had enabled me to make investment decisions that generated returns exceeding what traditional savings accounts could provide, while maintaining appropriate risk levels for my age and circumstances. The emergency fund I maintained provided security against unexpected expenses or income disruption without requiring family assistance or credit card debt accumulation. This financial cushion represented freedom from the anxiety that accompanied Victoria's approach to money management, where monthly bills created stress and required external intervention to prevent service disconnection or late payment penalties. Career advancement opportunities continued to emerge through my reputation for analytical excellence and reliable project completion within Morrison & Associates. Senior partners had begun, including me in client meetings and strategic planning, discussions that indicated potential for promotion to management positions requiring greater responsibility and offering increased compensation. The professional development activities I pursued through continuing education and industry certification programs demonstrated commitment to career growth that extended beyond minimum job requirements. These investments in my capabilities created competitive advantages that supported advancement opportunities while providing intellectual stimulation that enhanced job satisfaction and professional fulfillment. James had proposed marriage 6 months earlier with a ring selection process that reflected his understanding of my preferences and his commitment to building a partnership based on shared values rather than dramatic gestures designed to impress others. Our engagement had been celebrated quietly with close friends while generating polite acknowledgement from my family without the extensive planning sessions and gift registries that had accompanied Victoria's previous engagements. Wedding planning discussions between James and me emphasized creating a meaningful ceremony that reflected our relationship values while managing costs through practical decision-making rather than attempting to impress guests through expensive displays. Our approach prioritized long-term marriage success over short-term event planning, recognizing that wedding expenses should support rather than compromise financial goals for our shared future. The contrast between my engagement experience and Victoria's previous wedding planning disasters provided insight into different approaches to relationship priorities and financial management. While her engagements had generated extensive family involvement and financial contributions toward elaborate celebrations that ultimately failed to prevent relationship dissolution, my engagement represented commitment to partnership sustainability rather than event spectacle. Victoria's current romantic situation involved another relationship characterized by emotional intensity and financial instability, creating familiar patterns of family involvement in relationship drama and requests for financial assistance to address problems that seemed to recur regardless of specific boyfriend details. The emotional energy that these relationships consumed from family resources created ongoing distractions from other family priorities while reinforcing Victoria's position as the daughter requiring special attention and support. My mother's involvement in Victoria's romantic relationships included regular phone conversations about relationship difficulties, financial contributions toward shared expenses when boyfriends proved unreliable, and emotional support that extended beyond normal parental guidance to include active intervention in adult relationship problems. This pattern of involvement had been established through years of crisis management that taught Victoria to expect family resources would be available to address consequences of her romantic and financial decisions. The stability of my relationship with James provided contrast that seemed to generate less family interest than Victoria's dramatic partnerships, creating additional evidence of family dynamics that prioritized excitement over sustainability. Our relationship discussions with family members focused on practical planning details rather than emotional crises, resulting in conversations that received less attention and investment from parents who seemed more engaged by problems requiring their intervention than successes achieved through independent effort. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. These family dynamics had shaped my expectations and responses to the point where I had learned to find validation through professional achievement and romantic partnership, rather than seeking approval that seemed reserved for different personality types and lifestyle choices. The coping strategies I had developed included focusing on controllable factors while accepting family limitations that were unlikely to change, regardless of my efforts or achievements. The emotional resilience I had built through years of managing family dynamics that favored Victoria over me had created psychological strength that served me well in professional settings and romantic relationships where my practical approach and reliable character were valued rather than overlooked. This resilience would prove essential as family circumstances evolved in ways that would test all the patience and strategic thinking I had developed through years of navigating complex emotional terrain. As autumn approached and wedding planning activities with James accelerated, I maintained optimism that family relationships might improve as my personal happiness became more obvious through marriage preparation activities. However, the signs of change that were emerging within our family structure would challenge my assumptions about familiar patterns while revealing dynamics that had been developing beneath the surface of routine interactions. The telephone call, that would alter everything, came on a Tuesday evening in October when the first hints of seasonal change were beginning to affect the landscape around Millbrook Heights, creating the kind of atmospheric backdrop that often accompanies significant life transitions. Little did I know that the conversation awaiting me would mark the beginning of the most challenging and ultimately transformative period of my adult life, testing every assumption I had made about family loyalty, personal worth, and the true nature of love within family relationships. The telephone call that would forever alter the trajectory of my life arrived at 8:47 p.m. on October 15th, interrupting the peaceful evening James and I had planned around reviewing wedding venue contracts and finalizing guest list details. The caller identification displayed my mother's name, which initially prompted no particular concern since our weekly conversations typically occurred during evening hours when her social calendar permitted extended discussion. However, the tremor in Margaret Hartwell's voice immediately signaled that this conversation would deviate significantly from our usual exchanges about family news and social obligations. Her words came in fragmented bursts, punctuated by emotional pauses that suggested she was struggling to maintain the composure that typically characterized her communication style, even during difficult family discussions. "Elena, I need you to come home immediately," she began without her customary pleasantries or inquiry about my well-being. "Your father has had a massive heart attack. He's in intensive care at Millbrook General Hospital, and the doctors are saying we need to prepare for the worst possible outcome." The initial shock of receiving such devastating news created a momentary disconnection from reality as my mind struggled to process information that contradicted the invincibility I had always associated with Robert Hartwell. My father had represented stability and strength throughout my childhood and adult years, making the concept of his mortality feel abstract and impossible despite the medical evidence that suggested otherwise. James immediately recognized the gravity of the situation through my facial expression and began gathering our belongings while I continued the phone conversation with my mother. His instinctive response to crisis situations demonstrated the partnership qualities that had attracted me to him originally, showing how he prioritized practical support over emotional reactions during moments requiring decisive action. The C.I. drive to Millbrook Heights occurred in relative silence as I attempted to reconcile the image of my robust, controlling father with the medical reality described by my mother's fragmented account of the evening's events. Robert Hartwell had collapsed during dinner at the country club while discussing business matters with associates, succumbing to cardiac arrest that required immediate emergency response and transportation to the hospital's cardiac care unit. Upon arriving at Millbrook General Hospital, the sterile environment and mechanical sounds of medical equipment created an atmosphere that reinforced the severity of my father's condition, while highlighting the fragility of human life, regardless of wealth, social position, or personal determination. The waiting area outside the intensive care unit contained my mother and Victoria, both displaying emotional distress in characteristically different ways that reflected their distinct approaches to crisis management. Margaret Hartwell maintained her composed exterior while exhibiting subtle signs of internal turmoil through nervous hand movements and periodic glances toward the intensive care unit entrance. Her decades of social conditioning had taught her to manage public displays of emotion even during private family crises, creating a controlled facade that concealed the depth of her fear and uncertainty about my father's prognosis. Victoria's emotional expression proved far more dramatic and visible, involving tears, dramatic gestures, and verbal expressions of despair that attracted attention from other families in the waiting area. Her response pattern followed familiar, behavioral templates that positioned her as the primary victim of circumstances while demanding emotional support and practical assistance from available family members. The medical update provided by Dr. Sarah Chen, the attending cardiologist, confirmed that my father had suffered extensive damage to his cardiac muscle tissue, requiring immediate surgical intervention and creating uncertainty about his prospects for meaningful recovery. The technical explanation of his condition included terminology that emphasized the critical nature of his situation while avoiding definitive predictions about outcome possibilities. During the first 48 hours following his hospitalization, our family maintained continuous presence at the medical facility while rotating between waiting room vigils and brief visits to his bedside when medical staff permitted family interaction. These visits revealed the dramatic transformation that serious illness creates in individuals who previously represented strength and authority within family structures. Robert Hartwell appeared diminished and vulnerable in ways that contradicted decades of commanding presence and decisive leadership. The medical equipment surrounding his bed emphasized his dependency on technological intervention for basic survival functions, creating a visual reminder of mortality that affected each family member according to their individual psychological makeup and relationship history with him. My response to witnessing my father's condition involved analytical assessment of his medical situation, combined with emotional processing of grief and concern that remained largely internal. The financial planning skills I had developed professionally proved relevant as I began considering practical implications of potential outcomes including estate management, business continuity, and family financial security. Victoria's bedside behavior continued the dramatic patterns established in the waiting area, involving emotional displays that required frequent intervention from nursing staff and created disruptions that interfered with medical care delivery. Her inability to regulate emotional responses during crisis situations created additional stress for medical personnel, while demanding attention and resources that could have been directed toward patient care. My mother's interactions with medical staff demonstrated her organizational capabilities while revealing anxiety about financial and legal implications that extended beyond immediate health concerns. Her questions about prognosis and treatment options included inquiries about timeline considerations that suggested awareness of estate planning and business management issues requiring attention regardless of medical outcomes. James provided consistent support throughout this initial crisis period, without inserting himself inappropriately into family dynamics or medical decision-making processes. His presence offered emotional stability and practical assistance while respecting the boundaries appropriate for someone not yet officially married into the family structure. The business implications of my father's condition began emerging during the second day of hospitalization, as associates and partners contacted our family seeking information about continuity plans for ongoing projects and contractual obligations. These inquiries highlighted the extent to which Robert Hartwell's personal involvement had become integral to various business operations, creating potential complications that required immediate attention regardless of his health status. Margaret Hartwell's responses to these business inquiries revealed limited knowledge about specific operational details, while demonstrating awareness that significant financial interests required protection during my father's incapacitation. Her reliance on legal and accounting professionals for guidance indicated recognition of complexity that exceeded her personal expertise and comfort level. Victoria's participation in business-related discussions proved minimal and unfocused, reflecting her historical disengagement from family financial matters and her preference for emotional processing over practical problem-solving. Her contributions to family planning conversations typically involved questions about inheritance implications rather than operational continuity or business management requirements. My professional background in financial analysis provided relevant expertise for evaluating business continuity challenges and estate planning considerations that were emerging as immediate priorities. However, my suggestions and observations received limited attention from family members who seemed more focused on emotional processing than strategic planning for various outcome scenarios. The revelation that my father had not updated his estate planning documents in over 7 years created significant concern about potential complications affecting business operations and family financial security. This oversight suggested that his assumption of continued good health had prevented him from addressing succession planning and asset protection strategies that prudent financial management would typically require. Legal consultations arranged during the 3rd day of hospitalization confirmed that existing estate planning documents were outdated and potentially inadequate for addressing the current scale and complexity of Robert Hartwell's business interests and personal assets. The attorney's recommendations included immediate attention to power of attorney arrangements and medical decision-making authority to address current incapacitation issues. The selection of appropriate individuals for financial and medical power of attorney positions became a source of family discussion that revealed underlying assumptions about competence, trustworthiness, and decision-making capabilities among family members. These conversations highlighted long-standing patterns of role assignment that reflected historical family dynamics rather than objective assessment of qualifications. Margaret Hartwell's preference for involving Victoria in financial decision-making authority, despite her demonstrated lack of business knowledge or financial management experience, created tension with my professional assessment of qualified decision-making requirements. The emotional bonds between my mother and Victoria appeared to override practical considerations about expertise and reliability. My attempts to offer professional guidance about financial management and business continuity during my father's incapacitation were met with polite acknowledgement but limited implementation, suggesting that family emotional dynamics were taking precedence over practical expertise in critical decision-making processes. The medical prognosis remained uncertain throughout the first week of hospitalization as my father's condition stabilized, at a level that prevented immediate crisis while failing to indicate meaningful improvement potential. This prolonged uncertainty created ongoing stress for family members while requiring sustained presence at the medical facility and continued attention to business management issues. Victoria's emotional demands during this period included requests for financial assistance to address her inability to maintain employment while participating in hospital vigils, creating additional financial pressure on family resources during an already stressful time. Her expectation that family crisis should excuse her from economic responsibilities reflected established patterns of dependency that continued despite changed circumstances. The coordination of family schedules to maintain continuous hospital presence while addressing business obligations and personal responsibilities required organizational skills that fell primarily to me due to my experience with project management and scheduling complexity. This coordination role provided opportunities to demonstrate leadership capabilities while receiving limited recognition for contributions to family crisis management. James's support during this period included assistance with practical tasks such as meal preparation, transportation coordination, and communication with extended family members about my father's condition. His contributions allowed me to focus, on medical advocacy and business continuity issues while maintaining emotional stability during an extremely challenging time. The financial analysis I conducted regarding potential outcomes of my father's condition revealed significant implications for family financial security and business operations that required immediate attention regardless of his eventual recovery prospects. These assessments indicated need for strategic planning that addressed both short-term operational requirements and long-term wealth preservation goals. The estate planning attorney's preliminary assessment suggested that existing documents were inadequate for protecting family interests during incapacitation scenarios while failing to address tax optimization strategies that could preserve wealth for beneficiary distribution. These deficiencies created vulnerability that required immediate correction through updated legal documentation. My recommendations for estate planning updates included provisions that would protect family financial interests while ensuring qualified decision-making authority during incapacitation periods. However, these suggestions received limited consideration from family members who seemed overwhelmed by emotional aspects of the crisis, rather than focusing on practical protection requirements. The establishment of medical decision-making protocols became necessary as my father's condition required ongoing treatment decisions without his direct input or consent. These protocols highlighted questions about family member qualifications for making complex medical choices that could affect treatment outcomes and recovery prospects. Victoria's emotional volatility during medical consultations created concerns about her suitability for participating in life and death decision-making processes that required calm assessment of medical information and treatment alternatives. Her tendency toward dramatic responses to stressful information suggested potential for decision-making that prioritized emotional processing over medical optimization. My approach to medical advocacy involved systematic review of treatment options, consultation with multiple medical specialists, and evaluation of outcome probabilities that provided foundation for informed decision-making. This analytical methodology contrasted with family members who seemed to prefer emotional processing over systematic assessment of medical alternatives. The business continuity challenges that emerged during my father's hospitalization required immediate attention to prevent disruption of ongoing projects and contractual obligations. These operational requirements demanded expertise in financial management and strategic planning that exceeded the capabilities of family members without professional business experience. My professional qualifications provided relevant expertise for addressing business management requirements during my father's incapacitation, yet family decision-making processes continued to prioritize emotional relationships over technical competence in assigning responsibilities and authority. The revelation that significant estate planning oversights had created vulnerability for family financial interests became increasingly apparent as legal consultations continued. These deficiencies suggested that comprehensive estate planning updates were necessary regardless of my father's eventual recovery status, requiring immediate attention to prevent potential complications. As the first week of my father's hospitalization concluded without significant improvement in his condition, the family faced difficult decisions about long-term care planning and business management that would test every assumption we had made about roles, responsibilities, and decision-making authority within the Hartwell family structure. The transformation in family dynamics became apparent during the second week of my father's hospitalization, as his condition stabilized into a pattern that suggested long-term incapacitation rather than rapid recovery or immediate decline. This medical plateau created space for family members to shift attention from acute crisis management toward longer-term planning considerations that would ultimately reveal the true nature of relationships and priorities within the Hartwell family structure. Victoria's behavior underwent subtle but significant changes during this transition period, as she began positioning herself as the primary caregiver and emotional support system for our mother. Her strategic approach to this role involved increased presence at family discussions, enhanced participation in medical consultations, and systematic efforts to establish herself as the daughter who provided the most meaningful assistance during our family's most challenging period. The evolution of Victoria's involvement occurred gradually through small adjustments that individually appeared reasonable, while collectively creating a pattern of influence expansion that shifted family decision-making dynamics in her favor. Her emotional intelligence regarding family manipulation had been refined through years of practice, enabling her to implement strategies that appeared supportive while serving her underlying interests in establishing preferential treatment and decision-making authority. Margaret Hartwell's increasing dependence on Victoria for emotional support created opportunities for influence that my sister leveraged systematically to advance her position within family hierarchy. The grief and anxiety that accompanied my father's condition made my mother particularly vulnerable to manipulation tactics that positioned Victoria as essential for emotional stability and practical assistance during crisis management. My continued focus on professional responsibilities and practical problem-solving during this period was interpreted by family members as emotional distance rather than strength and competence. The analytical approach I maintained toward medical and financial challenges was characterized as coldness by Victoria, who suggested that my inability to display appropriate emotional distress indicated inadequate concern for family welfare and my father's suffering. The contrast between Victoria's emotional expressiveness and my practical contributions became a recurring theme in family discussions that consistently favored dramatic displays over effective action. Her tears and verbal expressions of despair were interpreted as evidence of deeper love and commitment, while my systematic approach to addressing business continuity and medical advocacy was viewed as insufficient emotional investment in family crisis. James observed these developing dynamics with growing concern about the systematic marginalization of my contributions, while Victoria's influence expanded through emotional manipulation rather than demonstrated competence. His perspective as an objective observer provided validation for my perception that family decision-making processes were becoming increasingly divorced from merit-based evaluation of capabilities and contributions. The estate planning discussions that occurred during the third week of hospitalization revealed the extent to which Victoria had positioned herself as my mother's primary advisor and confidant regarding financial and legal matters. Despite her demonstrated lack of expertise in these areas, her emotional relationship with our mother had created presumptive authority that superseded professional qualifications and analytical capabilities. Victoria's participation in estate planning conversations involved questions and suggestions that revealed her limited understanding of financial management and legal requirements, while demonstrating keen awareness of inheritance implications and asset distribution possibilities. Her inquiries focused primarily on beneficiary designations and asset allocation, rather than tax optimization or business continuity strategies that would preserve wealth and operational effectiveness. The family attorney, Thomas Whitfield, demonstrated professional courtesy toward all family members, while clearly recognizing the disparity in financial knowledge and strategic thinking between Victoria and myself. His questions about business operations and asset management were consistently directed toward me, yet family dynamics ensured that Victoria's emotional relationship with our mother carried greater weight in final decision-making processes. My recommendations for estate planning optimization included establishment of trust structures that would provide tax advantages while protecting assets from potential creditor claims and ensuring professional management of business interests during transition periods. These suggestions reflected sophisticated understanding of wealth preservation strategies that could significantly benefit family financial security over long-term periods. Victoria's response to my estate planning recommendations involved questions that revealed her focus on immediate access to assets rather than long-term wealth preservation or business continuity. Her concerns about trust structures and professional management reflected anxiety about potential limitations on her ability to access family resources for personal financial needs and lifestyle maintenance. The systematic exclusion of my expertise from family decision-making processes became increasingly apparent as discussions progressed without meaningful consideration of my professional qualifications or analytical contributions. The emotional bonds between Victoria and our mother created decision-making authority that superseded objective evaluation of competence and knowledge relevant to complex financial and legal challenges. Margaret Hartwell's increasing reliance on Victoria for guidance regarding estate planning decisions represented a fundamental shift in family authority structures that prioritized emotional comfort over practical effectiveness. The grief and stress associated with my father's condition had created vulnerability that Victoria exploited systematically to establish herself as the primary family advisor, despite her inadequate qualifications for such responsibility. The business management challenges that continued throughout my father's incapacitation required ongoing attention to contractual obligations, financial oversight, and strategic decision-making that exceeded Victoria's capabilities while falling directly within my professional expertise. However, family dynamics ensured that my contributions to business continuity received minimal recognition, while Victoria's emotional support was characterized as more valuable and meaningful. My attempts to maintain professional standards in addressing business management requirements created tension with family members who interpreted systematic approaches as insensitivity to emotional aspects of our crisis. The expectation that family tragedy should override business obligations reflected misunderstanding of fiduciary responsibilities and contractual commitments that required continued attention regardless of personal circumstances. Victoria's strategic positioning during family discussions involved subtle undermining of my contributions while promoting her own importance through emotional manipulation and dependency creation. Her comments about my perceived coldness and insufficient emotional expression were designed to establish contrast that favored her dramatic responsiveness over my practical effectiveness. The medical advocacy responsibilities that I had assumed during my father's hospitalization involved systematic review of treatment options, coordination with specialists, and evaluation of care quality that required analytical skills and persistent attention to detail. These contributions provided measurable benefits for my father's care, while receiving minimal acknowledgement from family members who prioritized emotional processing over medical optimization. Victoria's participation in medical advocacy involved primarily emotional responses to medical information rather than systematic analysis or strategic coordination of care improvements. Her dramatic reactions to medical updates created disruptions that interfered with information gathering while demanding attention and emotional support from medical staff and family members. The establishment of long-term care planning during the fourth week of hospitalization required evaluation of facility options, insurance coordination, and quality assessment that demanded professional-level analytical capabilities. My research and evaluation of care alternatives provided foundation for informed decision-making, while Victoria's contributions involved emotional preferences that lacked systematic assessment of care quality or financial implications. The financial implications of long-term care requirements created immediate concerns about cash flow management and asset preservation that required sophisticated planning to optimize outcomes while protecting family wealth. My analysis of insurance, coverage, care costs, and asset allocation strategies provided roadmap for managing these challenges effectively while minimizing financial impact on family resources. Victoria's understanding of long-term care financial implications proved limited to concerns about immediate costs rather than comprehensive assessment of insurance optimization, tax implications, and wealth preservation strategies. Her questions about care financing reflected anxiety about family resource depletion without strategic thinking about cost management or asset protection approaches. My professional network provided access to specialists in elder care planning, insurance optimization, and healthcare finance that could address complex challenges associated with long-term care management. These resources offered opportunities for professional consultation that could significantly improve care outcomes while reducing financial burden on family assets. The coordination of professional consultations required systematic approach to information gathering, option evaluation, and decision-making that leveraged expert knowledge while maintaining focus on optimal outcomes for both care quality and financial preservation. My project management experience provided relevant skills for managing multiple consultant relationships while synthesizing recommendations into actionable strategies. Victoria's response to professional consultation recommendations involved skepticism about expert advice that contradicted her emotional preferences, while demonstrating limited ability to evaluate technical information or strategic implications of various alternatives. Her tendency to prioritize emotional comfort over optimization created resistance to professional recommendations that could significantly benefit both care quality and financial outcomes. The systematic exclusion of my professional expertise from family decision-making processes continued, despite demonstrated effectiveness in addressing complex challenges associated with medical advocacy, business continuity, and long-term care planning. The emotional dynamics that governed family relationships consistently overrode merit-based evaluation of contributions and capabilities. Margaret Hartwell's increasing dependence on Victoria for emotional support and decision-making guidance created vulnerability that extended beyond immediate crisis management to include fundamental questions about family asset management and estate planning. This emotional dependency was systematically exploited to establish Victoria's authority over family financial matters, despite her demonstrated lack of relevant expertise. The legal consultations that occurred during the 5th week of hospitalization revealed the extent to which estate planning oversights had created vulnerability for family wealth preservation and business continuity. The attorney's recommendations for comprehensive estate plan updates required immediate attention to prevent potential complications that could significantly impact family financial security. Victoria's participation in legal consultations involved questions about inheritance timing and asset distribution that revealed her primary concern with immediate access to family wealth rather than long-term preservation strategies or business continuity requirements. Her focus on beneficiary rights and distribution schedules demonstrated limited understanding of estate planning objectives beyond personal financial benefit. My recommendations for estate planning optimization included sophisticated trust structures, tax minimization strategies, and business succession planning that would preserve wealth while ensuring professional management during transition periods. These suggestions reflected comprehensive understanding of estate planning principles and wealth preservation techniques that could significantly benefit family financial security. The resistance to my estate planning recommendations came primarily from Victoria, who expressed concerns about complexity and professional management requirements that could limit her direct access to family assets. Her preference for simple distribution structures reflected limited understanding of tax implications and asset protection benefits that sophisticated planning could provide. Margaret Hartwell's decision-making regarding estate planning updates became increasingly influenced by Victoria's emotional appeals and simplified presentations of complex issues that avoided technical details while emphasizing immediate accessibility concerns. This influence expansion represented systematic manipulation of our mother's grief and anxiety to advance Victoria's financial interests. The revelation that Victoria had begun private conversations with our mother about estate planning modifications occurred during the 6th week of hospitalization, when I discovered that legal consultations were being scheduled without my knowledge or participation. These secret meetings represented escalation of manipulation tactics that were designed to establish Victoria's authority over family financial decisions while excluding my professional expertise and analytical contributions. The strategic nature of Victoria's approach to estate planning influence became apparent through her systematic efforts to position herself as our mother's primary advisor, while undermining confidence in my professional qualifications and analytical recommendations. This manipulation campaign represented sophisticated understanding of emotional vulnerability, exploitation, while demonstrating her determination to secure preferential treatment in inheritance planning. My discovery of these private consultations created immediate concern about potential estate planning modifications that could compromise family wealth preservation, while failing to address business continuity requirements that demanded professional expertise and systematic planning. The exclusion of my knowledge and experience from these critical discussions represented fundamental violation of family collaboration principles, while threatening optimization of outcomes for all family members. The confrontation that resulted from my discovery of secret estate planning discussions would ultimately reveal the full extent of Victoria's manipulation campaign while establishing the foundation for family conflicts that would test every assumption about loyalty, competence, and fairness within the Hartwell family structure. The discovery of Victoria's clandestine estate planning activities occurred through a combination of professional vigilance and circumstantial evidence that emerged during my routine coordination of family business affairs. While reviewing the calendar of Thomas Whitfield, our family attorney, to schedule necessary updates to corporate documentation, I encountered appointment entries that listed meetings with Margaret and Victoria Hartwell that had been scheduled without my knowledge or participation. The systematic exclusion of my involvement in these legal consultations represented a fundamental breach of family collaboration protocols that had been established during the initial crisis period following my father's hospitalization. The timing and frequency of these secret meetings indicated deliberate coordination between Victoria and our mother to advance estate planning modifications without the benefit of my professional expertise or analytical assessment of proposed changes. My initial response to discovering these undisclosed legal consultations involved careful verification of appointment details and scope of discussions to ensure accurate understanding of the situation before confronting family members about their secretive behavior. The documentation available through attorney billing records and appointment scheduling systems provided clear evidence of multiple meetings that had occurred over a 3-week period without my knowledge. The strategic implications of these secret meetings extended beyond simple exclusion from family discussions to encompass potential modifications to estate planning documents that could significantly impact family wealth preservation, business continuity, and inheritance distribution. The absence of my professional input during these critical discussions created vulnerability for suboptimal decision-making that could compromise long-term family financial security. James provided emotional support and analytical perspective during my processing of this betrayal, offering objective assessment of family dynamics while helping me develop appropriate responses that would protect both my interests and family relationships. His experience with corporate politics and organizational behavior provided relevant insights for understanding manipulation tactics and developing strategic countermeasures. The confrontation strategy I developed prioritized professional presentation of concerns while maintaining family relationship preservation wherever possible. My approach emphasized protection of family interests rather than personal grievances, focusing on estate planning optimization and wealth preservation objectives that served all family members rather than individual preferences or emotional considerations. The scheduling of a comprehensive family meeting to address estate planning coordination required diplomatic communication that acknowledged the secret meetings while requesting inclusion in future discussions. My professional communication skills enabled presentation of this request in terms that emphasized family benefit rather than personal exclusion, maintaining collaborative tone while establishing boundaries for future decision-making processes. Margaret Hartwell's response to my request for estate planning inclusion revealed the extent to which Victoria had influenced her perspective regarding my role in family financial matters. Her explanation for excluding me from legal consultations involved characterizations of my analytical approach as unnecessarily complex and emotionally insensitive, reflecting Victoria's systematic campaign to undermine confidence in my professional contributions. The preparation for comprehensive estate planning discussions required extensive research into optimal wealth preservation strategies, tax minimization techniques, and business succession planning that would address all identified family needs while protecting long-term financial security. My professional network provided access to specialized expertise in estate planning optimization that could significantly enhance outcomes compared to simplified approaches favored by Victoria. Victoria's response to my request for inclusion In estate planning, discussions involve defensive justifications for secret meetings while attempting to characterize my professional involvement as controlling behavior rather than expertise contribution. Her manipulation tactics included emotional appeals about family unity and suggestions that my analytical approach created unnecessary complications during already stressful circumstances. The comprehensive estate planning meeting that eventually occurred during the 7th week of my father's hospitalization revealed the full extent of modifications that Victoria had proposed during her secret consultations with our mother. These proposed changes included significant alterations to inheritance distribution, asset allocation, and decision-making authority that heavily favored Victoria while diminishing my role in family financial management. The specific modifications proposed by Victoria included designation of herself as primary beneficiary for liquid assets, establishment of her authority over family business operations despite her lack of relevant experience, and creation of trust structures that would provide her with immediate access to substantial funds, while limiting my inheritance to longer-term distributions, subject to performance criteria and behavioral restrictions. My analysis of Victoria's proposed estate planning modifications revealed numerous financial inefficiencies, tax optimization failures, and wealth preservation oversights that would significantly reduce family financial security while failing to address business continuity requirements. The simplified structures she favored would create unnecessary tax liability while providing inadequate protection against potential creditor claims and market volatility. The professional presentation I developed to address Victoria's estate planning proposals included comprehensive analysis of tax implications, wealth preservation opportunities, and business succession strategies that demonstrated superior outcomes through sophisticated planning approaches. My recommendations provided measurable financial benefits while addressing all family security needs through professionally designed trust structures and asset protection mechanisms. Thomas Whitfield's professional assessment of competing estate planning approaches clearly favored my comprehensive recommendations while identifying significant deficiencies in Victoria's simplified proposals. His expertise in estate planning optimization provided objective validation of analytical approaches while highlighting potential consequences of emotional decision-making in complex financial matters. Victoria's response to professional critique of her estate planning proposals involved emotional appeals and accusations of family disloyalty rather than substantive defense of her recommendations. Her inability to address technical deficiencies in her proposals while maintaining focus on emotional manipulation tactics revealed the extent to which her influence depended on exploitation of our mother's grief rather than merit-based evaluation of alternatives. The systematic documentation I maintained regarding estate planning discussions provided clear evidence of professional expertise and analytical rigor that contrasted sharply with Victoria's emotional manipulation and oversimplified proposals. This documentation would prove essential for future legal proceedings while demonstrating the superior quality of my contributions to family financial planning. Margaret Hartwell's growing dependence on Victoria for emotional support continued to influence her evaluation of estate planning alternatives, despite objective evidence favoring comprehensive approaches over simplified solutions. The grief and anxiety associated with my father's condition created decision-making vulnerability that Victoria exploited systematically to advance her financial interests, regardless of family optimization requirements. The revelation that Victoria had been conducting private research into estate planning modification procedures occurred through discovery of her internet search history and legal consultation inquiries that revealed systematic efforts to understand inheritance acceleration and trust structure circumvention. These activities indicated premeditated planning to manipulate estate distribution regardless of family consultation outcomes or professional recommendations. The scope of Victoria's estate planning manipulation extended beyond immediate inheritance. Concerns to include investigation of methods for gaining control over family business operations, despite her lack of relevant experience or qualifications. Her research into corporate governance and decision-making authority revealed ambitions that extended far beyond personal financial benefit to encompass control over family wealth and business assets. My professional response to Victoria's systematic manipulation campaign required careful balance between family relationship preservation and protection of legitimate interests in optimal estate planning outcomes. The documentation and analysis I developed provided foundation for defending family financial security while maintaining collaborative approach to conflict resolution wherever possible. The consultation with independent estate planning specialists provided objective assessment of proposed modifications while validating the superiority of comprehensive approaches over simplified alternatives favored by Victoria. These professional opinions established clear evidence of optimal strategies while providing legal foundation for challenging emotionally driven decision-making that could compromise family financial security. The discovery that Victoria had been researching methods for expediting inheritance distribution while circumventing standard estate planning procedures revealed the calculated nature of her manipulation campaign. Her investigation into legal mechanisms for asset access during incapacitation periods indicated systematic planning to exploit family crisis for personal financial advantage. The strategic coordination between Victoria and our mother in scheduling secret legal consultations without my knowledge represented deliberate exclusion that violated collaborative decision-making principles while creating vulnerability for suboptimal outcomes. The timing and frequency of these meetings indicated systematic campaign to establish decision-making authority through emotional manipulation rather than merit-based evaluation. My professional network's assessment of Victoria's estate planning research revealed potential legal and ethical concerns regarding her proposed modifications, while highlighting the sophistication of comprehensive planning approaches that could address all family needs effectively. These expert opinions provided additional validation for analytical methods, while identifying risks associated with simplified alternatives. The documentation of Victoria's manipulation tactics included systematic record-keeping regarding secret meetings, proposed modifications, and research activities that would provide evidence for future legal proceedings if collaborative resolution proved impossible. This professional approach to conflict documentation demonstrated strategic thinking while maintaining focus on family interest protection. The psychological analysis of Victoria's behavior patterns during estate planning manipulation revealed sophisticated understanding of emotional vulnerability exploitation, while demonstrating her determination to secure preferential treatment regardless of family optimization requirements. Her systematic approach to influence expansion indicated careful planning rather than opportunistic behavior during family crisis. The financial modeling I conducted regarding various estate planning alternatives provided quantitative evidence of superior outcomes through comprehensive approaches, while demonstrating measurable costs associated with Victoria's simplified proposals. These analytical tools provided objective foundation for decision-making while highlighting the importance of professional expertise in complex financial planning. The revelation that Victoria had begun exploring legal mechanisms for challenging estate planning decisions that did not favor her preferences indicated escalation of manipulation tactics beyond family influence to include potential legal action. Her research into inheritance disputes and trust structure challenges revealed preparation for adversarial proceedings if collaborative manipulation proved insufficient. The strategic response I developed to address Victoria's escalating manipulation campaign included preparation for potential legal challenges while maintaining focus on family interest optimization through professional estate planning approaches. This preparation demonstrated proactive thinking while preserving options for collaborative resolution if family dynamics permitted reasonable discussion. The comprehensive analysis of family financial security requirements provided clear evidence that sophisticated estate planning approaches were necessary regardless of individual preferences or emotional considerations. The complexity of family assets and business operations demanded professional-level planning that exceeded the capabilities of simplified approaches favored by Victoria. The establishment of independent legal counsel to represent my interests in estate planning discussions became necessary as Victoria's manipulation campaign escalated beyond family collaboration to include potential adversarial proceedings. This professional representation provided protection while maintaining focus on optimal outcomes for all family members, rather than individual advantage. The discovery that Victoria had been systematically documenting my responses to her manipulation tactics for potential use in legal proceedings revealed the calculated nature of her campaign while indicating preparation for formal challenges to estate planning decisions. Her strategic approach to conflict documentation demonstrated sophisticated planning while highlighting the adversarial nature of her intentions. The comprehensive family meeting I had requested was scheduled for the 8th week following my father's hospitalization, taking place in the conference room of Thomas Whitfield's law office to ensure professional oversight and proper documentation of all estate planning discussions. The formal setting was deliberately chosen to establish appropriate boundaries for productive conversation while preventing the emotional manipulation tactics that had characterized recent family interactions. My preparation for this crucial discussion included development of comprehensive presentation materials that demonstrated optimal estate planning strategies through detailed financial analysis, tax optimization calculations, and wealth preservation projections. The professional quality of this documentation reflected my commitment to family financial security, while providing objective foundation for decision-making that transcended individual preferences or emotional considerations. Victoria arrived at the meeting accompanied by our mother, both displaying coordination in their approach that suggested extensive private preparation and strategic alignment regarding their objectives for the discussion. Their synchronized presentation of concerns and proposals indicated systematic planning that extended beyond spontaneous family collaboration to encompass calculated influence tactics designed to advance Victoria's financial interests. The opening statements presented by Thomas Whitfield established ground rules for productive discussion, while emphasizing his professional obligation to optimize estate planning outcomes for all family members rather than advancing individual preferences that might compromise overall financial security. His neutral approach to facilitating family negotiations provided essential structure for addressing complex issues without emotional escalation. Margaret Hartwell's initial presentation of her estate planning preferences revealed the extent to which Victoria's influence had shaped her thinking regarding inheritance distribution and family financial management. Her stated objectives prioritized immediate accessibility of assets over long-term wealth preservation, while demonstrating limited understanding of tax implications and business continuity requirements that demanded professional expertise. The specific modifications that our mother had been persuaded to consider included substantial alterations to inheritance percentages that heavily favored Victoria, establishment of simplified trust structures that provided immediate asset access without performance requirements, and designation of Victoria as primary decision-maker for family business operations, despite her demonstrated lack of relevant qualifications or experience. My response to these proposed modifications required careful balance between professional analysis and family relationship preservation, emphasizing objective assessment of financial implications while maintaining respectful tone regarding family member preferences. The presentation I delivered included comprehensive analysis of tax consequences, wealth preservation opportunities, and business succession requirements that demonstrated superior outcomes through sophisticated planning approaches. The financial projections I presented illustrated measurable benefits of comprehensive estate planning strategies compared to simplified alternatives preferred by Victoria and our mother. These quantitative analyses provided objective evidence of optimal approaches while highlighting potential costs associated with emotionally driven decision-making in complex financial matters requiring professional expertise and analytical rigor. Victoria's response to my professional presentation involved dismissive characterizations of analytical complexity while promoting simplified approaches that emphasized immediate family harmony over long-term financial optimization. Her arguments consistently prioritized emotional comfort and accessibility concerns over measurable financial benefits that comprehensive planning could provide for all family members. The systematic undermining of my professional credibility that Victoria had conducted during private consultations with our mother became apparent through responses that questioned my qualifications and motivations rather than addressing substantive, technical content of my recommendations. These character attacks represented continuation of manipulation tactics designed to establish her authority through discrediting rather than merit-based competition. Thomas Whitfield's professional assessment of competing estate planning approaches provided objective validation of comprehensive strategies while identifying specific deficiencies in simplified alternatives that could compromise family financial security. His expertise in wealth preservation and tax optimization supported analytical methods while demonstrating professional standards for estate planning excellence. The revelation that Victoria had been researching methods for expediting inheritance distribution through legal mechanisms designed for emergency situations created immediate concern about potential abuse of estate planning procedures for personal financial advantage. Her investigation into incapacitation protocols and asset transfer acceleration indicated systematic planning to exploit family crisis, regardless of optimization requirements for all beneficiaries. My documentation of Victoria's manipulation campaign provided comprehensive evidence of systematic influence tactics that had been employed to establish decision-making authority through emotional exploitation rather than demonstrated competence in financial management or estate planning. This professional record-keeping demonstrated strategic thinking while protecting legitimate interests in optimal family outcomes. The confrontation regarding secret legal consultations and deliberate exclusion from family financial planning created immediate tension that required careful management to prevent complete breakdown of collaborative possibilities. My approach emphasized protection of family interests rather than personal grievances, while establishing boundaries for future participation in critical decisions affecting long-term financial security. Victoria's defensive responses to questions about secretive behavior involved justifications that characterized exclusion as protection of family harmony rather than deliberate manipulation to advance her financial interests. Her explanations consistently avoided acknowledgement of professional expertise requirements while promoting emotional criteria for decision-making authority in complex financial matters. The systematic analysis I presented regarding business continuity requirements during my father's incapacitation period highlighted critical operational challenges that demanded immediate professional attention, regardless of inheritance distribution preferences. These business management needs required specialized knowledge and experience that exceeded Victoria's demonstrated capabilities while falling directly within my professional qualifications. Margaret Hartwell's emotional responses to technical discussions about estate planning optimization revealed the extent to which grief and anxiety had created decision-making vulnerability that Victoria had exploited systematically. The manipulation tactics employed during private consultations had established dependency relationships that prioritized emotional comfort over objective assessment of financial alternatives. The independent estate planning specialist I had consulted provided additional professional opinion regarding optimal strategies for family wealth preservation, while validating comprehensive approaches over simplified alternatives that could compromise long-term financial security. This expert testimony provided objective foundation for challenging emotionally driven decision-making that failed to address technical requirements. The revelation that Victoria had begun exploring legal mechanisms for challenging estate planning, decisions that did not provide her with preferential treatment, indicated escalation beyond family influence to potential adversarial proceedings. Her research into inheritance disputes and trust structure modifications revealed preparation for formal challenges if collaborative manipulation proved insufficient for achieving her objectives. The strategic documentation I maintained regarding all estate planning discussions provided comprehensive record of professional contributions and analytical rigor that contrasted sharply with Victoria's emotional manipulation and oversimplified proposals. This systematic approach to conflict management demonstrated proactive thinking while preserving options for legal protection if collaborative resolution proved impossible. The financial modeling I conducted regarding various inheritance distribution scenarios provided quantitative evidence of optimal approaches while demonstrating measurable consequences of decisions driven by emotional preferences rather than professional analysis. These analytical tools established objective criteria for evaluation, while highlighting importance of expertise in complex wealth management. Thomas Whitfield's summary of estate planning alternatives included clear recommendations favoring comprehensive strategies that addressed tax optimization, wealth preservation, and business continuity requirements through professionally designed trust structures and asset protection mechanisms. His professional opinion provided authoritative validation of analytical approaches, while identifying risks associated with simplified alternatives. The escalation of family conflict during this comprehensive meeting revealed fundamental incompatibility between Victoria's manipulation tactics and collaborative decision-making processes based on merit and professional expertise. Her consistent resort to emotional appeals and character attacks when confronted with technical analysis demonstrated inability to compete on substantive grounds. My commitment to family financial optimization despite personal treatment remained unwavering throughout confrontational discussions, emphasizing protection of all family members through superior estate planning approaches rather than advancement of individual interests through emotional manipulation. This principled approach demonstrated integrity while maintaining focus on optimal outcomes. The conclusion of the comprehensive family meeting without resolution of fundamental disagreements regarding estate planning approaches established clear parameters for future interactions while highlighting irreconcilable differences between professional optimization and emotional manipulation as decision-making criteria. The documentation of this meeting would prove essential for subsequent legal proceedings. The strategic preparation I initiated following this confrontational meeting included consultation with independent legal counsel specializing in estate, planning disputes while maintaining focus on collaborative resolution wherever possible. This professional approach demonstrated commitment to family interest protection while preparing for potential adversarial proceedings if manipulation tactics continued to compromise optimal outcomes. The psychological impact of witnessing systematic family betrayal and manipulation required careful processing to maintain emotional stability, while continuing professional contributions to family financial security. James provided essential support during this challenging period, while helping me develop appropriate responses that protected both personal interests and family relationships wherever possible. The comprehensive analysis I completed regarding family financial security requirements provided clear evidence that sophisticated estate planning was necessary regardless of individual preferences or emotional considerations. The complexity of assets and business operations demanded professional-level expertise that exceeded capabilities of simplified approaches favored through emotional manipulation rather than technical assessment. The establishment of protective measures for my interests in family estate planning became necessary as Victoria's manipulation campaign escalated beyond collaborative influence to include potential legal challenges. These preparations demonstrated strategic thinking while maintaining commitment to optimal outcomes for all family members rather than purely defensive positioning. The recognition that family dynamics had shifted beyond collaborative decision-making to adversarial positioning required fundamental adjustment of approach while maintaining professional standards and integrity throughout increasingly difficult circumstances. This adaptation demonstrated resilience while preserving focus on family financial optimization, despite systematic undermining of professional contributions. The systematic exclusion from family financial planning, despite demonstrated expertise and analytical rigor, created immediate need for independent legal protection while maintaining hope for eventual recognition of professional contributions to family wealth preservation. This balanced approach reflected commitment to optimal outcomes while protecting legitimate interests in estate planning processes. The documentation of all manipulation tactics and systematic influence campaigns provided comprehensive foundation for potential legal proceedings while demonstrating professional approach to conflict management. This strategic record-keeping would prove essential as family dynamics continued deteriorating beyond collaborative resolution toward formal adversarial proceedings, requiring legal intervention and protection. The deterioration of my father's condition accelerated during the 9th week of his hospitalization, as complications from his cardiac event created cascading health challenges that overwhelmed his body's capacity for recovery. The medical team's assessment indicated that his prognosis had shifted from uncertain to terminal, requiring immediate attention to end-of-life planning and final estate planning modifications that could no longer be delayed pending his potential recovery. Dr. Sarah Chen's consultation with our family regarding palliative care options and timeline considerations provided the sobering reality that my father's remaining time would be measured in days rather than weeks. This medical assessment created urgent pressure for completion of estate planning modifications while establishing clear parameters for family decision-making during his final period of consciousness and communication capability. The coordination of final conversations between my father and family members required careful scheduling that balanced medical requirements with emotional needs while ensuring adequate opportunity for communication of essential information regarding his wishes for estate distribution and business succession. These conversations would prove crucial for understanding his true intentions regarding family financial arrangements and inheritance planning. My individual consultation with my father during his final days of consciousness provided opportunity for private discussion regarding his assessment of family dynamics and his concerns about estate planning modifications that had been proposed during his incapacitation. His lucid moments revealed awareness of manipulation tactics that had been employed while expressing specific instructions regarding his preferred approaches to wealth preservation and inheritance distribution. Robert Hartwell's private communication, with me included expression of confidence in my professional capabilities and analytical judgment regarding estate planning optimization. His acknowledgement of my expertise and contributions to family financial management provided validation that contrasted sharply with the systematic undermining I had experienced from other family members during recent months of crisis management. The specific instructions my father provided during our private conversation included emphasis on comprehensive estate planning approaches that would optimize tax efficiency and wealth preservation for all family members, rather than simplified distribution schemes that prioritized immediate accessibility over long-term financial security. His preference for sophisticated planning strategies validated the analytical approaches I had recommended throughout the estate planning discussions. Victoria's individual consultation with our father occurred under circumstances that prevented private conversation due to her emotional volatility and tendency toward dramatic displays that required medical intervention. The nursing staff's presence during her visits ensured appropriate medical monitoring while limiting opportunity for private influence attempts that might have compromised his decision-making during vulnerable moments. The final estate planning modifications that my father approved during his last days of consciousness reflected comprehensive strategies that incorporated professional recommendations for tax optimization and wealth preservation rather than simplified approaches that had been promoted through emotional manipulation. These decisions demonstrated his commitment to family financial security through analytically sound planning approaches. Margaret Hartwell's emotional distress during my father's final days created additional vulnerability that Victoria continued to exploit through intensive emotional support and dependency creation. The systematic manipulation that had characterized recent months intensified during this critical period as Victoria positioned herself as essential for our mother's emotional stability and decision-making support. The passing of Robert Hartwell occurred peacefully during the early morning hours of a Thursday in late November, surrounded by family members who had maintained continuous presence during his final days. His death marked the conclusion of a challenging period that had tested every assumption about family relationships while revealing true character traits and priorities among family members. The immediate aftermath of my father's death required coordination of funeral arrangements, business continuity measures, and estate administration procedures that demanded systematic organization and professional oversight. The complexity of these responsibilities highlighted the importance of analytical capabilities and project management skills that I possessed, while Victoria focused primarily on emotional processing and social coordination. The funeral planning process revealed continued family dynamics that prioritized Victoria's emotional preferences over practical considerations regarding cost management and appropriate commemoration of my father's life and achievements. Her insistence on elaborate arrangements that exceeded reasonable expense levels created tension with financially responsible approaches that would preserve family resources for beneficiary distribution. My approach to funeral planning emphasized meaningful commemoration that honored my father's values and achievements while maintaining cost efficiency and resource preservation that reflected sound financial management principles. The contrast between practical planning and emotional excess became apparent through discussions regarding venue selection, service arrangements, and memorial activities. The business continuity challenges that required immediate attention following my father's death included contractual obligations, operational oversight, and strategic decision-making that could not be delayed pending estate administration completion. These responsibilities demanded professional expertise and analytical capabilities that exceeded Victoria's qualifications while falling directly within my professional competencies. The preliminary estate administration procedures initiated by Thomas Whitfield included identification of assets, evaluation of debts and obligations, and assessment of tax implications that would affect distribution timing and beneficiary allocations. These complex administrative requirements highlighted the importance of professional estate planning approaches that had been implemented despite Victoria's preference for simplified alternatives. The revelation that my father had executed final estate planning modifications during his last days of consciousness came through Thomas Whitfield's preliminary review of estate documents and administrative requirements. These modifications reflected his commitment to comprehensive wealth preservation strategies that incorporated professional recommendations for optimal family financial security. The scheduling of the formal will reading was arranged for 1 week following the funeral services to allow appropriate time for grief processing while ensuring timely initiation of estate administration procedures. This timing balanced emotional considerations with practical requirements for efficient estate management and beneficiary communication regarding inheritance distribution plans. Victoria's anticipation of the will reading was evident through her increased attention to inheritance discussions and her expressions of confidence regarding preferential treatment that she expected to receive based on her systematic influence campaign during recent months. Her assumptions about estate distribution reflected belief that emotional manipulation had successfully established her position as primary beneficiary. My preparation for the will reading included comprehensive analysis of estate planning strategies that my father had approved during his final days while maintaining realistic expectations regarding inheritance distribution that reflected his expressed commitment to family financial optimization rather than individual preference accommodation. This analytical approach provided emotional stability during uncertain circumstances. The formal will reading took place in Thomas Whitfield's conference room with all immediate family members present, along with appropriate legal representatives and estate administration personnel. The professional setting and formal procedures established appropriate gravity for communication of my father's final wishes regarding asset distribution and family financial management. Margaret Hartwell's emotional state during the will reading required supportive presence from Victoria, who continued her established pattern of positioning herself as essential for our mother's emotional stability. This dependency relationship provided Victoria with confidence that her influence campaign had been successful in securing preferential treatment through estate planning modifications. The opening statements presented by Thomas Whitfield established the legal framework for estate administration, while emphasizing his professional obligation to execute my father's documented wishes regarding asset distribution and beneficiary designations. His formal approach provided appropriate structure for communication of complex information, while maintaining professional standards for estate administration. The initial sections of the will reading included standard legal language and procedural requirements that preceded specific asset distribution and beneficiary designation details. These preliminary components provided foundation for understanding the comprehensive nature of estate planning documents while building anticipation for revelation of specific inheritance allocations. Victoria's visible confidence during the early portions of the will reading reflected her expectation that systematic manipulation tactics had successfully established her position as primary beneficiary. Her demeanor suggested certainty that emotional influence had override analytical considerations in final estate planning decisions. The revelation of asset distribution percentages that allocated equal inheritance shares between Victoria and myself represented significant deviation from the preferential treatment that Victoria had expected based on her manipulation campaign. This equal allocation reflected my father's commitment to fair treatment, despite systematic influence attempts that had characterized recent family dynamics. Victoria's shocked response to equal inheritance distribution indicated that her manipulation tactics had failed to achieve the preferential treatment she had systematically pursued through emotional influence and dependency creation. Her visible distress reflected recognition that comprehensive estate planning approaches had been implemented, despite her campaign for simplified alternatives. The specification of trust structures and distribution requirements that accompanied inheritance allocations demonstrated implementation of sophisticated wealth preservation strategies that incorporated professional recommendations for tax optimization and long-term financial security. These complex arrangements validated analytical approaches over simplified alternatives that had been promoted through emotional manipulation. Margaret Hartwell's surprise at the comprehensive nature of estate planning arrangements reflected her limited understanding of the modifications that had been implemented during my father's final days of consciousness. The sophisticated trust structures and distribution requirements exceeded the simplified approaches that Victoria had promoted during private consultations. The designation of professional trustees and asset management oversight represented implementation of expert financial management that would ensure optimal investment performance and wealth preservation for all beneficiaries. These professional management arrangements validated systematic approaches to estate administration over family member control that might compromise optimal outcomes. Victoria's growing agitation during revelation of comprehensive estate planning arrangements indicated recognition that her systematic manipulation campaign had failed to achieve the preferential treatment and control authority she had pursued. The equal treatment and professional oversight provisions contradicted her expectations regarding inheritance distribution and asset management authority. The revelation of specific business succession planning arrangements that designated professional management rather than family member control represented additional defeat for Victoria's campaign to establish authority over family business operations despite her lack of relevant qualifications. These provisions ensured operational continuity through expert oversight rather than emotional decision-making. My emotional response to fair inheritance treatment and comprehensive wealth preservation arrangements reflected appreciation for my father's commitment to optimal family financial security through professional estate planning approaches. The validation of analytical methods over emotional manipulation provided satisfaction while honoring his legacy of strategic thinking and sound financial management. The immediate aftermath of the will reading revealed Victoria's profound disappointment and growing desperation as the reality of equal inheritance distribution contradicted her expectations of preferential treatment that she believed her manipulation campaign had secured. Her visible distress during the concluding portions of the legal proceedings indicated recognition that months of systematic influence tactics had failed to achieve the financial advantages she had pursued through emotional exploitation of family crisis circumstances. The equal inheritance allocation between Victoria and myself represented a fundamental validation of fair treatment principles, despite the systematic campaign of manipulation and exclusion that had characterized family dynamics during my father's incapacitation period. This equitable distribution reflected Robert Hartwell's commitment to balanced consideration of both daughters, rather than preferential treatment based on emotional manipulation or dependency creation tactics. Victoria's response to inheritance equality included immediate questioning of estate planning authenticity and suggestions that final modifications had been influenced by circumstances that compromised my father's decision-making capacity. Her challenges to document validity reflected unwillingness to accept outcomes that failed to provide the preferential treatment she had systematically pursued through months of intensive emotional manipulation efforts. The professional estate administration procedures implemented by Thomas Whitfield included comprehensive verification of document authenticity and decision-making capacity assessments that addressed potential challenges to inheritance distribution arrangements. These protective measures ensured legal validity of estate planning decisions while providing foundation for defending fair allocation principles against manipulation-based objections. Margaret Hartwell's emotional processing of inheritance arrangements reflected confusion regarding the sophisticated estate planning structures that had been implemented despite her preference for simplified approaches promoted by Victoria during private consultations. The comprehensive trust mechanisms and professional management oversight exceeded her understanding while providing superior wealth preservation compared to alternatives that had been influenced by emotional manipulation. The revelation that trust distribution schedules included performance-based criteria and behavioral requirements for both beneficiaries represented additional sophistication in estate planning that prioritized responsible financial management over immediate accessibility. These requirements applied equally to Victoria and myself, ensuring that inheritance benefits were contingent upon demonstration of appropriate stewardship and personal responsibility. Victoria's reaction to performance-based inheritance requirements included immediate objections to criteria that would limit her access to funds while requiring demonstration of financial responsibility and productive behavior. Her resistance to accountability measures reflected expectation that inheritance should provide unconditional access to family wealth without regard for stewardship principles or responsible management requirements. The specific performance criteria established within trust structures included requirements for stable employment, demonstration of financial responsibility through debt management and savings behavior, and participation in continuing education or professional development activities. These criteria reflected my father's commitment to encouraging productive behavior, while ensuring that inheritance benefits supported personal growth, rather than enabling dependency or irresponsible lifestyle choices. My response to performance-based inheritance requirements reflected appreciation for structured approaches that encouraged responsible behavior while providing fair access to family wealth. The accountability measures represented recognition that inheritance benefits should support personal development and productive contributions rather than enabling lifestyle choices that failed to demonstrate appropriate stewardship of family resources. The establishment of professional trustee oversight for inheritance distribution provided independent evaluation of performance criteria, compliance, while ensuring objective assessment of beneficiary behavior and financial management. This professional oversight prevented family manipulation of inheritance access while maintaining consistent standards for both beneficiaries, regardless of emotional influence attempts. Victoria's growing agitation regarding professional oversight of inheritance distribution reflected recognition that her systematic manipulation tactics would be ineffective against independent trustees who evaluated performance based on objective criteria rather than emotional appeals or dependency creation. The professional management structure eliminated opportunities for influence tactics that had been employed during estate planning discussions. The comprehensive nature of trust structures included provisions for wealth preservation through diversified investment management, tax optimization strategies, and asset protection mechanisms that ensured long-term financial security for beneficiaries while preventing premature depletion of family wealth through irresponsible spending or poor financial decisions. The complexity of inheritance arrangements required detailed explanation sessions with Thomas Whitfield to ensure beneficiary understanding of distribution schedules, performance requirements, and professional oversight mechanisms. These educational components demonstrated the sophisticated planning that had been implemented while providing transparency regarding expectations and accountability measures. Victoria's participation in inheritance education sessions revealed limited understanding of financial management principles and resistance to learning requirements that would enhance her ability to manage inherited wealth responsibly. Her focus remained primarily on immediate access concerns, rather than long-term wealth preservation strategies that would maximize inheritance benefits over extended periods. My engagement with inheritance education reflected appreciation for learning opportunities that enhanced understanding of wealth management principles, while demonstrating commitment to responsible stewardship that aligned with performance criteria expectations. The professional development aspects of inheritance requirements provided valuable enhancement of financial management capabilities. The discovery that Victoria had begun researching legal mechanisms for challenging trust structures and performance requirements indicated escalation of her campaign beyond family influence to potential formal legal action. Her investigation into trust modification procedures and beneficiary rights revealed systematic planning to circumvent accountability measures through adversarial proceedings. The strategic documentation I maintained regarding Victoria's manipulation, campaign, and resistance to performance-based inheritance requirements provided comprehensive foundation for defending estate planning authenticity against potential legal challenges. This professional record-keeping demonstrated systematic approach to conflict management, while protecting legitimate interests in fair inheritance distribution. The consultation with independent legal counsel specializing in trust administration and estate planning disputes became necessary as Victoria's resistance to inheritance arrangements escalated toward potential formal challenges. This professional representation provided protection against manipulation tactics, while ensuring appropriate defense of fair allocation principles and accountability requirements. The revelation that Victoria had approached Margaret Hartwell with proposals for joint legal action against trust structures represented escalation of manipulation tactics to include our mother in adversarial proceedings against estate planning arrangements. Her attempt to create family alliance against professional oversight indicated desperation regarding inability to access inheritance through traditional influence methods. Margaret Hartwell's vulnerability to Victoria's legal action proposals reflected continued emotional dependency that could be exploited for advancing challenges to inheritance arrangements that had been professionally designed for optimal family financial security. The grief and confusion associated with widowhood created decision-making susceptibility that Victoria systematically targeted for advancing her objectives. The comprehensive analysis I conducted regarding potential legal challenges to trust structures provided strategic assessment of defensive requirements, while maintaining focus on protecting fair inheritance distribution and accountability principles. This analytical approach demonstrated proactive thinking while preserving optimal outcomes for all family members despite adversarial positioning by Victoria. The financial implications of potential legal challenges to estate planning arrangements included significant costs that would reduce available inheritance for distribution to beneficiaries while creating family conflict that contradicted my father's intentions for harmonious wealth transfer. These potential consequences highlighted the destructive nature of manipulation-based objections to fair treatment principles. Thomas Whitfield's professional assessment of potential challenges to trust structures included evaluation of legal foundation for defending estate planning authenticity, while identifying strategies for protecting inheritance arrangements against manipulation-based objections. His expertise provided confidence regarding successful defense of fair allocation principles and accountability requirements. The systematic campaign Victoria initiated to undermine confidence in estate planning arrangements included attempts to characterize professional oversight as excessive control while promoting simplified distribution approaches that would eliminate accountability requirements. Her influence tactics targeted emotional concerns rather than substantive assessment of wealth preservation benefits that sophisticated planning provided. The recognition that Victoria's campaign had shifted from collaborative family influence to adversarial legal positioning required fundamental adjustment of defensive strategies while maintaining commitment to fair inheritance principles and optimal family financial security. This adaptation demonstrated resilience while preserving focus on protecting legitimate interests against manipulation-based challenges. The establishment of comprehensive legal defense against potential trust challenges included preparation of evidence regarding estate planning authenticity, decision-making capacity assessments, and professional oversight benefits that supported fair inheritance distribution. This systematic approach provided foundation for successful defense while maintaining focus on family financial optimization. The psychological impact of witnessing systematic escalation from family manipulation to potential legal adversarial proceedings required careful emotional management while continuing commitment to fair treatment principles and responsible inheritance stewardship. James provided essential support during this challenging transition while helping maintain perspective regarding long-term objectives. The strategic coordination between independent legal counsel and Thomas Whitfield provided comprehensive defense capabilities against potential trust challenges while ensuring protection of inheritance arrangements that reflected my father's commitment to fair treatment and accountability principles. This professional collaboration demonstrated optimal defensive positioning. The documentation of Victoria's escalating campaign from family manipulation through legal challenge preparation provided comprehensive evidence of systematic attempts to circumvent fair inheritance distribution through various influence tactics. This professional record-keeping would prove essential for defending estate planning authenticity against manipulation-based objections. The revelation that Victoria had begun exploring methods for expediting inheritance access through emergency distribution procedures indicated continued focus on immediate financial benefit rather than long-term wealth preservation that comprehensive trust structures were designed to provide. Her research into acceleration mechanisms revealed persistent prioritization of accessibility over optimization. The comprehensive preparation for potential adversarial proceedings included analysis of legal precedents, evaluation of defensive strategies, and coordination of professional expertise that would protect fair inheritance principles against manipulation-based challenges. This systematic approach demonstrated commitment to preserving my father's intentions while maintaining optimal outcomes for legitimate beneficiaries. The recognition that family dynamics had deteriorated beyond collaborative resolution to formal adversarial positioning required acceptance that Victoria's manipulation campaign had created irreconcilable conflict regarding inheritance distribution and accountability requirements. This reality necessitated strategic defensive positioning while maintaining hope for eventual recognition of fair treatment principles. The formal initiation of legal proceedings against the estate planning arrangements occurred during the third week of December, when Victoria filed a comprehensive challenge to the trust structures and inheritance distribution mechanisms that had been established through my father's final estate planning modifications. Her legal action represented the culmination of months of systematic manipulation efforts that had failed to achieve preferential treatment through family influence tactics. The legal documentation submitted by Victoria's attorney included multiple grounds for challenging the estate planning arrangements, encompassing allegations of diminished capacity during final modifications, undue influence in decision-making processes, and inadequate consideration of family member needs in inheritance distribution. These challenges reflected sophisticated legal strategy designed to undermine the authenticity and validity of comprehensive wealth preservation mechanisms. Victoria's selection of legal representation included engagement of Harrison Burke, a prominent estate litigation attorney whose reputation for aggressive advocacy in inheritance disputes provided formidable opposition to defending the established trust structures. His experience with challenging complex estate planning arrangements represented significant threat to maintaining the fair inheritance distribution that my father had carefully designed through professional consultation. The strategic approach, employed by Victoria's legal team, included systematic attacks on the professional oversight mechanisms that had been established to ensure objective evaluation of performance criteria and responsible wealth management. Their arguments characterized trustee authority as excessive control that violated beneficiary rights while promoting immediate distribution alternatives that would eliminate accountability requirements. My response to Victoria's legal challenge required engagement of specialized legal counsel with extensive experience in defending sophisticated estate planning arrangements against manipulation-based objections. The selection of Catherine Morrison, a distinguished trust and estate attorney, provided expert representation capable of protecting the comprehensive wealth preservation strategies that had been professionally designed for optimal family financial security. The defensive strategy developed by Catherine Morrison included comprehensive preparation of evidence supporting the authenticity of estate planning decisions, the appropriateness of professional oversight mechanisms, and the benefits of performance-based distribution criteria for encouraging responsible beneficiary behavior. This systematic approach provided foundation for successful defense of fair inheritance principles against adversarial challenges. The discovery process, initiated through formal litigation, required extensive documentation of family dynamics, estate planning discussions, and decision-making processes that had occurred during my father's final months. This comprehensive review provided opportunity to demonstrate the systematic nature of Victoria's manipulation campaign while validating the professional quality of estate planning arrangements that had been implemented. The deposition testimony provided by family members, medical professionals, and legal advisors created detailed record of circumstances surrounding estate planning modifications while establishing clear evidence of decision-making capacity and professional oversight that supported the authenticity of inheritance arrangements. These testimonies provided objective foundation for defending against challenges based on allegations of diminished capacity or undue influence. Margaret Hartwell's participation in discovery proceedings revealed the extent to which Victoria's influence had shaped her understanding of estate planning issues, while demonstrating limited awareness of the comprehensive wealth preservation benefits that sophisticated trust structures provided. Her testimony highlighted the effectiveness of emotional manipulation tactics while supporting the necessity of professional oversight for optimal family financial security. The medical testimony provided by Dr. Sarah Chen and other healthcare professionals who had treated my father during his final illness established clear evidence of mental capacity and decision-making competence during periods when estate planning modifications were executed. This professional medical assessment provided crucial foundation for defending the authenticity of inheritance arrangements against capacity-based challenges. Thomas Whitfield's testimony regarding estate planning consultations and document preparation provided detailed account of professional procedures that had been followed to ensure appropriate consideration of family interests while implementing sophisticated wealth preservation strategies. His expert testimony validated the quality and authenticity of estate planning arrangements while demonstrating compliance with professional standards and ethical requirements. The financial analysis I had conducted regarding estate planning alternatives provided comprehensive evidence of superior outcomes achieved through sophisticated trust structures compared to simplified distribution mechanisms that Victoria had promoted through emotional manipulation. This quantitative assessment demonstrated measurable benefits of professional oversight while highlighting potential costs of alternative approaches that prioritized immediate accessibility over long-term wealth preservation. Victoria's deposition testimony revealed significant inconsistencies in her allegations regarding estate planning authenticity, while demonstrating limited understanding of financial management principles and wealth preservation strategies. Her responses to technical questions highlighted the superficial nature of her objections, while validating the necessity of performance-based criteria for responsible inheritance stewardship. The revelation during discovery proceedings that Victoria had systematically documented family interactions and estate planning discussions for potential litigation use provided evidence of premeditated adversarial positioning rather than legitimate concerns about estate planning appropriateness. This strategic documentation campaign demonstrated calculated approach to challenging inheritance arrangements regardless of their professional quality or fair distribution principles. The expert testimony provided by independent estate planning specialists validated the sophistication and appropriateness of trust structures, while identifying the superior wealth preservation benefits that comprehensive approaches provided compared to simplified alternatives. These professional opinions established objective foundation for defending estate planning arrangements against manipulation-based challenges. The business valuation and succession planning testimony provided by corporate finance experts demonstrated the necessity of professional oversight for maintaining operational continuity and maximizing asset value during transition periods. This expert analysis validated the business management provisions that had been established while highlighting risks associated with family member control that lacked relevant qualifications. The litigation costs associated with defending against Victoria's challenges created significant financial burden that reduced available resources for beneficiary distribution while generating family conflict that contradicted my father's intentions for harmonious wealth transfer. These consequences highlighted the destructive nature of adversarial proceedings that prioritized individual advantage over family financial optimization. The strategic coordination between Catherine Morrison and Thomas Whitfield provided comprehensive defense capabilities while ensuring protection of inheritance arrangements through systematic preparation of evidence and expert testimony. This professional collaboration demonstrated optimal defensive positioning against manipulation-based challenges to legitimate estate planning arrangements. The mediation proceedings that were mandated by the court system provided opportunity for collaborative resolution of inheritance disputes without continued adversarial positioning that created destructive costs and family conflict. These alternative dispute resolution mechanisms offered potential for preserving family relationships while maintaining fair inheritance distribution principles. Victoria's approach to mediation proceedings continued the adversarial positioning that had characterized her legal challenge, including demands for preferential inheritance treatment and elimination of performance-based accountability requirements. Her negotiation stance reflected unwillingness to accept fair treatment principles while maintaining focus on immediate financial benefit, regardless of long-term wealth preservation considerations. My participation in mediation emphasized commitment to fair inheritance distribution and responsible stewardship principles while demonstrating flexibility regarding implementation mechanisms that could address legitimate concerns without compromising wealth preservation objectives. This collaborative approach provided foundation for potential resolution that honored my father's intentions while addressing family relationship preservation. The mediation outcome reflected partial success in establishing modified distribution schedules that maintained fair allocation principles while providing enhanced accessibility for demonstrated financial responsibility. These negotiated arrangements preserved essential accountability requirements while addressing some concerns regarding distribution timing and oversight mechanisms. The settlement agreement that concluded formal litigation included provisions that maintained professional trustee oversight while establishing modified performance criteria that reflected negotiated balance between accountability requirements and beneficiary accessibility. These arrangements preserved wealth preservation objectives while providing framework for responsible inheritance distribution that addressed legitimate concerns from both parties. The financial costs of litigation and mediation proceedings created significant reduction in available inheritance for distribution, while highlighting the destructive consequences of adversarial challenges to professional estate planning arrangements. These costs demonstrated the importance of collaborative family decision-making, while validating the wisdom of comprehensive wealth preservation strategies that had been professionally designed. The psychological impact of defending against systematic, legal challenges while maintaining commitment to fair inheritance principles required extensive emotional resilience and strategic thinking throughout extended adversarial proceedings. James provided essential support during this challenging period, while helping maintain perspective regarding long-term objectives and family relationship preservation wherever possible. The resolution of formal legal challenges provided validation of professional estate planning approaches while establishing framework for ongoing inheritance administration that maintained fair distribution principles and accountability requirements. This outcome demonstrated the effectiveness of systematic defensive preparation while preserving optimal family financial security despite adversarial positioning by family members. The establishment of modified trust administration procedures that reflected negotiated settlement terms provided foundation for ongoing inheritance distribution while maintaining professional oversight and performance-based criteria that encouraged responsible beneficiary behavior. These arrangements preserved essential wealth preservation mechanisms while addressing accessibility concerns through collaborative resolution rather than continued adversarial proceedings. The comprehensive documentation of litigation proceedings and settlement negotiations provided extensive record of systematic attempts to challenge fair inheritance distribution while demonstrating successful defense of professional estate planning arrangements. This documentation would prove valuable for future inheritance administration while providing lessons regarding family conflict management and wealth preservation strategies. The recognition that formal legal challenges had been successfully defended while preserving fair inheritance principles provided satisfaction regarding validation of professional approaches to estate planning and family financial management. This outcome demonstrated the effectiveness of systematic preparation and expert representation while maintaining commitment to optimal family financial security despite manipulation-based opposition to accountability requirements. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.